Meghan Markle's creepy Prince William stalking has just been uncovered, and what it shows you is that she is still completely obsessed with the other brother. The brother who she really wanted. Okay, that brother who has the power, who has the humor, and who has the money.
For nearly 1,000 years, the royal family lived by one powerful rule. No matter what headlines exploded across the media, no matter how brutal the rumors got, the royals stayed quiet. That silence was part of the image, the mystery, the control, the untouchable reputation. It all depended on never reacting publicly. This was never just some simple PR move either. It was the core system behind one of the oldest institutions on the planet. The monarchy survived scandals, betrayals, public outrage, and non-stop pressure because they kept emotions hidden and handled problems behind closed doors. But then, according to reports that started spreading across royal insiders and commentators, something changed completely in late 2025. The old rule reportedly got tossed aside in a way nobody expected, and William allegedly did not handle it with some calm royal statement or polished palace response. There was no carefully crafted press release meant to cool things down quietly.
For the time being, it's impossible for me to take my family back to the UK safely.
Reports claim he came out fighting hard, and suddenly the palace looked nothing like the controlled machine people were used to seeing. The entire tone around the monarchy reportedly shifted fast, and people following the royal family closely started noticing the difference immediately. Tonight, we are breaking down all of it. Where this reported shift supposedly began, what insiders claim started happening behind palace walls, what William allegedly said publicly, what Catherine was reportedly doing quietly behind the scenes, and why this entire situation could change the monarchy moving forward. Because if even part of these reports are true, then the royal family people see today is completely different from the version the world knew just a few years ago.
But the problem is, this is a woman so desperate to try and save her failing business that she knows there are only two things that work anymore. There are only two things that get her attention, even amongst her dwindling band of propagandists in the mainstream media. And those two things are, number one, her children, and number two, her proximity to royalty.
The silence that protected the institution for generations may no longer be the strategy anymore. According to reports, the turning point may have started sometime between 2021 and 2023, when a collection of private messages allegedly surfaced and landed in the hands of key people inside the institution. And once that reportedly happened, insiders claim the mood inside the palace changed overnight. Not slowly, not through some quiet meeting about handling public image more carefully. Reports describe a massive internal shift that allegedly made people inside the institution stop and rethink everything they believed was happening behind the scenes. The atmosphere reportedly became tense fast, with senior figures suddenly viewing situations through a completely different lens. These were not described as random gossip or messy rumors floating around online. According to commentary and reports, the messages allegedly painted a detailed picture of what was happening privately during one of the most chaotic periods the royal family had faced in decades. And for the people who reportedly saw those messages, the contents were said to be deeply uncomfortable. According to what has been reported, King Charles was allegedly described as emotionally distant during a period when Meghan publicly said she needed support the most. That alone reportedly created serious concern internally and may have shifted conversations happening among senior royals behind closed doors. But insiders claim one specific sentence allegedly changed everything inside the palace. According to reports, Meghan allegedly wrote that if Charles would not protect her, the narrative will safeguard me. That line reportedly hit hard inside royal circles because people immediately started debating what it actually meant. Some believed it sounded like a warning about public perception and media influence. Others reportedly viewed it as a sign that control over the royal image was beginning to slip away in ways the institution had never dealt with before. And depending on how someone interpreted that sentence, it could completely change the way they viewed everything that happened after that. One way to read the situation is this: Meghan may have genuinely felt trapped, isolated, and unsupported inside an institution that seemed impossible to navigate.
We don't go back to some of the practices in the past that Harry and I had to grow up in. I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda.
From that perspective, someone trying to protect themselves and speak openly about painful experiences is completely understandable. That interpretation has been discussed heavily, and many people believe it deserves to be acknowledged fairly. But according to reports, there was another interpretation that allegedly hit much harder inside palace walls. Some insiders reportedly viewed those messages as something far more calculated. Not simply someone sharing personal experiences, but a deliberate effort to shape public opinion using private moments, emotional struggles, and sensitive family situations. And according to royal commentary, that distinction changed everything. The conversation reportedly shifted from, "She is telling her side of the story," to concerns that there may have been a broader strategy behind how certain narratives were presented publicly. Once palace figures allegedly started viewing events through that lens, insiders claim there was no going back. Suddenly, every interview reportedly looked different. Every headline, every carefully timed media appearance, every story that surfaced in the press started getting analyzed in a completely new way. What may have once looked like emotional fallout reportedly began getting viewed internally as something far more organized and intentional. According to reports, the palace allegedly stopped treating the situation as a private family issue that needed patience and quiet understanding. Instead, insiders claim it started being handled like a serious institutional challenge that required an actual strategy behind the scenes, not just polite public statements saying, "We wish them well." Reports suggest conversations allegedly became far more serious than that, with senior figures believing the monarchy needed a stronger and more coordinated response moving forward. At the same time all of this was reportedly unfolding, another major shift was allegedly happening behind closed palace doors. King Charles, while reportedly managing serious health concerns of his own, is said to have made a decision that shocked people inside royal circles. Instead of handling the Sussex situation through the monarchy's usual slow-moving system, filled with committees, formal procedures, carefully measured statements, and royal distance, reports claim Charles allegedly handed full responsibility over to William.
The only way she is going to try and sell these jams, I still don't think it's going to be effective, is pimping out the children and her husband. Nancy Sidley, "Hey Meghan, the British called. They want you to stop hijacking their culture or apologise for causing them racist. Here's your proof that Meghan Markle knows the only things that will get her failed brand attention are Harry and the kids. That's it." And sure enough, this was immediately briefed to People magazine, the propaganda set People magazine, who somehow tried and turned that low-budget video into something cutesy pie, because she's just given Archie and Lily another new nickname. Did you pick up on that? It's Lil now. Lil and Arch. The Royal News Network responded, "What the heck is this?"
According to insiders, this internal arrangement was reportedly referred to as Memo 2485, while some accounts allegedly called it the Fall Mandate. And if the reports are accurate, the meaning behind it was simple but huge. William would now take full control over anything connected to Harry and Meghan moving forward. One voice, one strategy. No more mixed messaging coming from different parts of the palace. According to commentary surrounding the reports, that level of authority being passed down was highly unusual and carried massive significance inside the institution. And historically, this kind of move almost never happens. Royal disputes at this level have traditionally been handled directly by the reigning monarch. The sovereign decides what gets addressed publicly, what stays private, what quietly disappears, and what receives a formal response. That has been the system for generations. So for Charles to reportedly step back and place that responsibility directly into William's hands was not viewed as some small procedural change. According to reports, insiders allegedly saw it as a loud signal that the old royal playbook was no longer working for this situation. And considering everything Charles himself was reportedly dealing with at the time, many royal watchers believe the decision may have reflected just how serious palace officials believed the situation had become behind the scenes. At the time, King Charles was reportedly dealing with an incredibly difficult balancing act. He was managing a serious health situation while still carrying out the non-stop responsibilities of being sovereign. State visits, diplomatic meetings, public appearances, major ceremonies, constant pressure from the media, the workload never really stopped. And according to reports, trying to personally manage one of the most complicated family situations the monarchy had faced in decades, on top of all that became far too much for one person to handle alone. Insiders allegedly believed the pressure inside the palace had reached another level entirely. William, on the other hand, reportedly had the energy, the focus, and maybe most importantly, the personal investment in what was happening. Reports claim he was not interested in quietly sidestepping the situation or carefully dancing around it the way previous generations often did. And according to royal commentary, Charles allegedly understood exactly how direct William's approach could become and still chose to hand him the responsibility anyway. That decision reportedly said a lot about how seriously the situation was being viewed behind closed doors. What this reported arrangement also changed was the palace's communication strategy moving forward. According to insiders, there would now be one clear voice handling anything connected to Harry and Meghan. No more mixed messages, no more confusion about who was speaking for the institution. In previous years, there were reportedly moments when different parts of the palace appeared disconnected, with conflicting signals allegedly coming from separate royal offices at the same time. Reports claim that era was officially over. People working around William supposedly recognized immediately that the approach ahead was going to look very different from the traditional royal method the public had been used to seeing. The strategy reportedly became sharper, faster, and far more controlled behind the scenes. And while the public was heavily focused on Catherine's health during this same period, another layer of the story was allegedly unfolding quietly in the background. People around the world were concerned about her recovery and wondering when she would return publicly. But according to reports, she was still deeply involved behind palace walls, not through speeches or public appearances, not in front of cameras. Insiders claim Catherine was allegedly helping shape the direction the monarchy itself was preparing to take moving forward. And honestly, according to royal commentators, that reportedly makes perfect sense given her role inside the institution. Catherine had spent years learning exactly how the monarchy functions, what keeps public trust alive, and what could potentially damage that image if left unchecked.
Is this idea that somehow my wife was the one that destroyed the relationship between these two brothers?
Reports suggest she strongly understood that the royal family's value depended heavily on one thing above all else: showing up, putting duty before personal drama, and maintaining stability in the public eye. Anything that distracted from that image reportedly became viewed as a serious problem internally. So while recovering privately, Catherine was allegedly already thinking several moves ahead. According to reports, questions inside the palace reportedly became, what should the monarchy look like during this moment? What message should the public be seeing? And what situations needed to be addressed before they created long-term damage? The answers she allegedly helped shape reportedly became the foundation for many of the public moves William would later make. Insiders claim new internal protocols quietly started taking form without public announcements or dramatic headlines attached to them. According to reports, stricter rules around messaging were allegedly introduced behind the scenes. Clearer boundaries were reportedly set regarding what deserved a response, what should be ignored completely, and how to separate the image of the working royals from ongoing headlines coming out of California. And perhaps the biggest reported shift of all was this: the palace allegedly decided the old strategy of endlessly absorbing criticism without pushing back was no longer sustainable. What makes Catherine's alleged role especially fascinating is how invisible it reportedly remained through all of this. No public credit, no official acknowledgement, no dramatic reveal. Everything was supposedly happening quietly in the background, which many royal watchers believe may have made the strategy even more effective. Because by the time William's tougher public approach started becoming visible, reports suggest the entire plan had already been carefully built behind closed doors. According to reports, even though Catherine's name was nowhere near the headlines during this period, her influence was allegedly all over the strategy taking shape behind palace walls. Insiders claim many of the decisions and messaging shifts reportedly carried her fingerprints quietly in the background. But before any of the tension exploded publicly, William allegedly made one final attempt to handle the situation privately and directly with Harry. Reports say that in October 2025, William personally called his brother, and according to royal commentary, this was not some casual family check-in or emotional reunion conversation. William reportedly had one very specific goal during that call. He allegedly wanted Harry to publicly correct what William believed were false or misleading claims surrounding Catherine and how she had supposedly treated Meghan. Reports claim William was not demanding some dramatic apology or asking for a full reconciliation between the families. He simply wanted what he believed was an accurate version of events placed on the record. But according to insiders, Harry's response reportedly changed everything. The conversation allegedly came to a dead stop when Harry reportedly said that changing the narrative now would damage everything he had built in his new life.
And we know that's because she has no other choice. Nothing else is working, from the Mama's Little Helper video to the Disney pictures. Meghan Markle only has one thing that anyone cares about: her children and her husband. And unfortunately, what this does is completely torpedo her and Prince Harry's bid to try and claim some type of political win with their bid to crack down on social media.
And according to reports, that answer hit William hard behind the scenes. Think about the weight of that moment for a second. According to these accounts, William believed he was asking his brother to clarify the truth regarding their sister-in-law. But the reported response allegedly suggested the public image surrounding the situation had become too valuable to walk back publicly. And from William's alleged perspective, insiders claim that was the exact moment he stopped believing this could still be solved privately between brothers. Reports suggest he no longer viewed Harry as someone stuck in confusion or caught in the middle of competing pressures. Instead, according to royal commentary, William allegedly came away believing Harry had made a clear choice, and that the choice prioritized public narrative and personal branding over protecting family relationships. Then, only days after that reported phone call failed to resolve anything, William allegedly did something that stunned even long-time royal watchers. According to reports, he stepped into the picture gallery at Kensington Palace and addressed the situation publicly himself. No spokesperson standing in front of microphones. No carefully polished palace statement packed with vague diplomatic language. No royal phrasing designed to sound important while revealing almost nothing. Insiders claim William spoke directly and plainly in a way the royal family almost never does publicly. Reports say he allegedly pushed back against claims involving Catherine head-on and stated clearly that nobody in the family had treated Meghan in the way some public narratives had suggested. He also reportedly referenced what he described as organized attempts to damage Catherine's public reputation through media stories, online amplification, and strategically boosted coverage. And according to observers, the way William framed the situation reportedly carried a much bigger message than just defending Catherine. He allegedly described one side as a family focused on duty, public service, charity work, state responsibilities, and showing up consistently without making themselves the center of attention. Then, without directly naming anyone, Reports say he contrasted that with what he viewed as a very different approach built around publicity and media battles. The striking part, according to people in the room, was that he did not even need to say names out loud. Everyone watching reportedly understood exactly who and what he was referring to, and the reaction afterward was explosive. Royal commentators reportedly said they had never seen a senior royal communicate this way before. Not this openly, not this directly, and especially not with this level of willingness to call out alleged media coordination and public narrative management in front of cameras. This was not the monarchy using its traditional, careful language filled with distance and restraint. According to reports, this felt like something entirely different. The future king deciding publicly that the old rule of staying silent at all costs no longer worked in the modern media era. And from that moment forward, insiders claim one thing became very clear behind palace walls. Whatever happened next, the royal family reportedly had no intention of remaining the quiet side in the fight anymore. What many people watching this drama did not fully realize at the time was that a huge amount of the palace's response had reportedly already been planned long before William ever stepped in front of cameras at Kensington Palace. According to reports, a private team of specialists had allegedly been assembled quietly behind the scenes with no public announcement at all. Their reported job was not public relations in the usual royal sense. Insiders claim they were tasked with carefully studying and tracking the entire Sussex-related media landscape in detail. That reportedly included analyzing connections between stories, identifying which media outlets certain narratives appeared in, monitoring timing patterns, studying how stories spread online, and examining how specific topics gained traction across social media and press coverage. According to reports, everything was allegedly mapped out piece by piece, and what insiders claim they eventually saw reportedly did not look random at all. According to royal commentary, the palace allegedly began viewing the pattern as highly coordinated. Stories reportedly appeared in carefully selected outlets at strategic moments. Certain headlines allegedly gained rapid attention through amplification methods that seemed designed to place them directly in front of targeted audiences at exactly the right time. Reports suggest palace officials gradually stopped seeing the situation as simply Harry and Meghan sharing personal experiences publicly. Instead, insiders claim it allegedly started being viewed as a structured media operation focused on shaping public perception of the royal family, especially Catherine. By the time William reportedly gave that now heavily discussed appearance at Kensington Palace, reports say he had already been fully briefed on everything this private team had allegedly gathered behind closed doors. And according to reports, the response from the other side came fast. Within roughly 72 hours of William's public comments, major American outlets reportedly published fresh stories focused on Meghan's emotional experience inside the royal family. The coverage allegedly emphasized feelings of exclusion, emotional isolation, and lack of support.
I was really ashamed to say it at the time and ashamed to have to admit it to Harry, especially because I know how much loss he's suffered.
Observers noted that the framing appeared highly personal and sympathetic, which, according to royal commentators, may have been intended to redirect public attention away from William's claims and back toward Meghan's perspective. For people who had followed the media cycle closely over the years, the pattern reportedly felt familiar. But this time, according to insiders, the palace allegedly reacted very differently than it would have in the past. Instead of staying silent and waiting for the headlines to fade naturally, reports claim palace representatives pushed back publicly and directly challenged what they described as commercially driven content being presented as purely personal storytelling. And according to commentators, that was a major shift. The palace historically avoided directly criticizing media narratives in public, but reports suggest this time officials allegedly wanted to call attention to what they believed was a broader pattern involving branding, publicity, and audience targeting connected to emotional storytelling. Rather than quietly absorbing criticism the way the institution traditionally had for decades, Insiders claim the palace reportedly made a deliberate decision to identify and confront the pattern openly. But according to these accounts, the next phase that reportedly came from California may have been even more revealing. Royal commentators observed that the public messaging allegedly started shifting away from direct complaints about royal life altogether. Instead, the focus reportedly moved toward reinvention and independence. Suddenly, the headlines became more centered around wellness projects, children's content, documentaries discussing generational cycles, personal growth messaging, and themes about breaking patterns. The image reportedly evolved from frustrated former royals into forward-facing public figures, building a completely new identity. And on the surface, many observers thought it was a smart, strategic pivot. But according to reports, palace officials had allegedly already anticipated that move too, because insiders reportedly believed the reinvention narrative still depended heavily on one thing underneath it all: the ongoing connection to royal tension and the image of breaking away from an ancient institution that still fascinated global audiences. In other words, according to royal commentary, even the new image reportedly still carried the monarchy's shadow attached to it, whether openly acknowledged or not. According to royal commentators, the palace allegedly understood something very important about the entire situation. If the royal connection ever faded completely, a major part of the public fascination could disappear with it. Reports suggest insiders believed the tension, the conflict, and the idea of breaking away from an ancient institution were all huge parts of what kept global audiences emotionally invested in the story. And if that connection weakened too much, the overall narrative could reportedly lose some of its power and attention. That is why, according to these accounts, the palace was not just reacting to headlines in the moment. Insiders claim officials were allegedly thinking several moves ahead, studying not only the current strategy, but also what could come next down the road. Then came what many reports describe as one of the most shocking developments yet. According to royal insiders, discussions allegedly began around removing Harry and Meghan's remaining royal status completely. Not a temporary reduction, not another partial separation from duties. Reports claim the possibility of a total and permanent split was quietly being considered behind closed doors. That reportedly included access to royal properties, remaining honorary roles, official recognition, and any lingering institutional ties. And according to commentators, this was viewed as the kind of move that changes everything permanently once it happens. But true to royal tradition, the palace allegedly handled the situation with almost total silence publicly. No dramatic announcements, no emotional statements, no public spectacle. Reports suggest the process was treated more like a quiet closing of the door than an explosive confrontation. Around this same period, another moment reportedly caught people's attention in a completely different way. According to reports, William allegedly began speaking publicly about Archie and Lilibet, and insiders claim the tone shifted noticeably. Instead of sounding purely strategic or carefully political, William reportedly sounded more personal and emotional than before. According to reports, he allegedly said the children deserved stability, privacy, and the chance to grow up away from non-stop media pressure and constant public conflict. The palace later reportedly clarified that these comments were not intended as any kind of threat or legal signal. But according to observers following the story closely, the deeper message still came through clearly. The institution, reports claim, was allegedly becoming increasingly uncomfortable with how younger family members were being pulled into public narratives and media cycles. And by publicly framing the conversation around the children's well-being, insiders suggest the palace may have shifted public attention onto the emotional cost of the ongoing media battle itself. According to commentators, that made the entire situation much more complicated for everyone involved. Once children became part of the public discussion, continuing the media war at the same intensity reportedly started raising difficult questions for audiences watching from the outside. Then came the moment many royal watchers say completely changed the atmosphere in the room. According to reports, William allegedly referenced Prince Andrew during one of these conversations, and the comparison reportedly landed with enormous weight inside royal circles. Prince Andrew, of course, had already become one of the most controversial figures connected to the modern monarchy. He lost official duties, royal patronages, public visibility, and much of his standing within the institution itself. The royal family has since kept significant distance publicly. But according to insiders, William was not reportedly bringing him up as a personal insult or direct attack. Instead, commentators claim he was making a much bigger institutional point. The message allegedly centered on how the monarchy operates when it believes standards or expectations are no longer being met. Reports suggest William's point was that no family member exists above the institution itself, regardless of title, popularity, or bloodline. According to these accounts, the underlying message was simple but powerful. The same rules apply to everyone connected to the crown. Titles do not guarantee protection forever. Public standing can change. Privileges can disappear. And history had already shown that the monarchy was willing to create distance from even very senior family members if it believed the institution required it. Observers describe the moment as a warning delivered through historical example rather than direct confrontation. Nobody reportedly needed the comparison explained out loud because everyone in the room allegedly understood exactly what was being implied. And through all of this public chaos, Catherine reportedly stayed completely silent. No interviews, no emotional public responses, no attempts to jump into the media storm personally. But according to royal commentators, while the battle played out loudly around her, Catherine was allegedly making a far more lasting statement through quiet strategy, discipline.
And she wants the children to have their names, princess, prince. So she's desperately coming back for that. She must have realized that she's done a terrible mistake. What she didn't want to walk behind Catherine because Catherine is higher up on the hierarchy, and she didn't like that. So many times she would try and push forward and get ahead first, and Harry had to pull her back because she couldn't do that. And I also saw the A's pulling her back. She didn't want to do that. And the one time I told you about Harry going back to his mother and saying that he really ought to use Meghan because she's sort of made so much of herself that she would make a much better person at that level than Catherine, because Catherine just came from university. It's really, she's nothing to look like her or anything.
And the role she continued playing behind the scenes. Just days after the most intense period of this entire royal storm, Catherine reportedly made an appearance that instantly caught attention for all the opposite reasons people expected. According to reports, she quietly visited a pediatric oncology center wearing a simple dress and a small anchor brooch that many royal watchers quickly noticed. There was no dramatic press conference, no emotional speech, no public attempt to respond to the headlines exploding around her at the time. She reportedly just arrived, met with families and staff, and focused on the work in front of her. And according to commentators following the situation closely, the contrast could not have looked sharper. At the same time, headlines connected to California reportedly centered around documentaries, interviews, public branding, business launches, and constant media attention. Catherine's appearance projected something completely different. One side dominating headlines loudly, the other quietly standing inside a children's cancer ward without needing to say much at all. For many observers, the message reportedly spoke for itself. Then there was one, quote, allegedly connected to Catherine during this period, that insiders claim left senior palace figures stunned because of how calm yet firm it sounded. According to reports, she allegedly told people close to her, "I forgive her, but I will not accept her suffering as my duty." That line reportedly carried enormous weight inside royal circles because it seemed to express several emotions at the same time. There was empathy in it, there was restraint, there was no public bitterness or cruelty attached to the statement. But according to commentators, there was also an unmistakable boundary being drawn. The reported message was not about revenge or punishment. Instead, insiders suggest it reflected the belief that personal struggles and public conflict could not be allowed to permanently shape the direction of the monarchy itself. And according to reports, that balance became central to the palace's overall strategy during this period. Compassion on one side, institutional clarity on the other. Royal commentators claim the palace allegedly worked hard to maintain both ideas simultaneously, without allowing emotion, media pressure, or public controversy to completely overpower the institution's long-term goals. When you step back and look at everything together, many observers believe this period may have marked the end of one royal era and the beginning of something entirely different. For generations, the monarchy survived by staying distant from controversy. The strategy was always simple: remain above public fights, avoid responding directly to accusations, and let tradition, ceremony, and continuity preserve the institution's authority over time. And for decades, that approach actually worked surprisingly well, even during difficult scandals and periods of public criticism. But according to reports, palace officials allegedly began realizing the modern media world had changed the rules completely. Today, a private message can reportedly become an international headline within hours. Social media amplification can spread emotional narratives globally before institutions even have time to respond. And insiders claim that reality reportedly forced the palace to confront something uncomfortable. The old strategy of total silence may no longer work the way it once did in a non-stop digital media environment. According to royal commentators, the silence that once made the monarchy appear dignified and untouchable had reportedly started creating a completely different impression in the modern media era. In some circles, staying silent no longer looked powerful. It started looking like the palace was unable or unwilling to respond, and reports suggest that is exactly why William and Catherine allegedly decided the institution needed a very different approach moving forward. Instead of relying only on mystery and distance, insiders claim they reportedly built a strategy that is far more direct, far more proactive, and much harder to ignore publicly. A strategy willing to openly challenge narratives, identify media patterns, call out what they allegedly see as coordinated attacks, and speak in plain language the royal family almost never used before. That alone represents a massive shift inside one of the oldest institutions in the world. Because the old system was never just about avoiding drama, the mystery itself carried value. The less the monarchy explained, the more untouchable it appeared. Silence protected the image, protected the distance.
King Charles coming down hard on Prince William, no Chucky boy, and assassination. Yes, you heard me correct.
And protected the idea that the institution existed above ordinary public conflict. But according to reports, once you start publicly explaining yourself, there is no easy way to go backward. The moment the palace enters the conversation directly, the public expects answers again and again. And that changes the relationship completely. In exchange for the ability to defend themselves publicly, the monarchy may also be giving up some of the mystery that protected it for generations. And honestly, according to many royal observers, nobody truly knows yet whether that trade will help the institution long-term or create entirely new problems down the road. There is no historical blueprint for this version of the monarchy, no precedent for a future king standing in front of cameras and openly discussing media coordination, online amplification, and public narrative battles in everyday language. The old version of the monarchy, patient, restrained, endlessly absorbing criticism without publicly reacting, reportedly may be disappearing in real time. What seems to be replacing it, according to these accounts, is something leaner, tougher, faster, and far less willing to stay quiet when the institution feels challenged. Now the huge question becomes this: is this exactly the kind of monarchy needed for the social media era? Or could this new approach eventually pull the royal family into conflicts that become impossible to fully control once the door has been opened? Because if the events of 2025 reportedly proved anything, it is that the next chapter of the monarchy may look nothing like the one that came before it. And what makes this even bigger is that, according to reports, William and Catherine do not appear to be drifting into this accidentally. Royal commentators believe they have allegedly made a deliberate choice about the kind of institution they want to lead moving forward. The era of silence as automatic dignity may truly be ending, and whether this new strategy becomes the monarchy's greatest modern survival tool or the beginning of a completely unpredictable new era is something only time will answer. So now we want to hear from you. Do you think William and Catherine made the right move by stepping away from the old royal rule of silence? Or do you think the monarchy risks losing something important by becoming more direct publicly? Drop your thoughts down in the comments, because this debate is only getting bigger. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and share this with anyone following the royal drama closely. Your support seriously helps the channel grow and keeps these deep dives coming.